Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Our course title is Non-Fiction Prose. Our program is BS English Semester 8. Our course code is 4129 and I'm your teacher Samina Bashir. So welcome to the class of Non-Fiction Prose. Dear students, today we will discuss the essay of Truth by Sir Francis Bacon. So let's start with some introductory points. Bacon very expertly uses different types of literary devices like paradox, aphorism and climax in his essays. So it is the quality of Bacon that he used and he merged different literary devices in his essays. He usually uses condensed sentences, very condensed sentences, very brief and terse, rather profound, and that are ripened of meanings. He is known for his proverbial sentences, the sentences that he wrote. Those very sentences converted into proverbs. One of salient features of his style is that his short sentences carry an ocean of meanings in them. Usually the start of his essay is sudden, abrupt. It means he starts his essay onslaught discussing the matter of interest. For example, in his essay of Truth, he starts, "What is truth?" said jesting Pilate, and would not stay for an answer. So it is a sudden start. Francis Bacon is known for being a major advocate of the plain style in writing. He was a consistent opponent of the ornate rhetorical style that is favored by many Renaissance humanists. He argued that clear thinking about science and philosophy required transparent and clear language, and saw many of the errors of Romanism and Aristotelianism as being due to their having used language in imprecise ways. When we talk about the notable features of Bacon's essay, that is his aphoristic style. So what is aphoristic? Aphorism is actually a straightforward statement that state a truth, that state a fact, that state a reality. Bacon in his essays writes in an aphoristic style, making general statement. So those truths, through those facts, he makes some general statements. For example, in his essay of Studies, Bacon states that studies have three purposes: to delight, for ornament, and for ability. Again, he says that there are different kinds of books. Some are to be pursued lightly, others to be digested, and so on. Bacon merely states these facts almost as if they are established truths. He does not provide his personal opinion or give any examples as to which books are to be read lightly or which are to be digested. This thing he leaves on the part of reader. This aphoristic style in Bacon's writing leaves the reader to his own interpretations. Bacon's essays also display a few other features. His essays are usually short, sometimes shorter than what the conventional of essay suggests. It is maybe due to the above stated features of his writing that Bacon is known as the father of English essays. Now we will discuss the summary and analysis of Truth. Bacon, in his essay Of Truth, has presented the objective truth in various manifestations. Similarly, Bacon shares with us the subjective truth operative in social life, that is used in social life, that is operate in social life, that is being operated in social life. So, Of Truth is Bacon's masterpiece, a major masterpiece that shows his keen observation of human beings with special regard to truth. In the beginning of the essay, Bacon rightly observes that generally people do not care for truth as Pilate, the governor of the Roman Empire, while conducting the trial of Jesus Christ, cares little for truth. As we see the first line of Truth, that what is truth, said jesting Pilate, and would not stay for an answer. Advancing his essay, Bacon explores the reasons why the people do not like truth. First, truth is acquired through hard work, and man is ever reluctant to work hard. Secondly, truth curtails man's freedom. It is a fact that man prefers to cherish illusions, to cherish lies, which makes his life more interesting and easier. With a profound observation of man's psychology, Bacon states that if deprived of false pride and vanities, the human mind would contract like a deflated balloon, and these human beings would become poor, sad, and ill. So, however, poetic untruth is not gone unnoticed by Bacon's piercing intellect. He always he always gives the due consideration to poetic untruth. He says, though poetic untruth is a wine of the devil in priest's eyes, yet it is not as harmful as the other lies are. Bacon, being a literary artist, illustrates this concept with an apt imagery that the poetic untruth is but the shadow of a lie. The inquiry of truth, knowledge of truth, and belief of truth are compared with the enjoyment of love. Such a comparison lends the literary charm to this essay. Bacon further says in that the last act of creation was to create rational faculty, which helps in finding truth, is the finished product of God's blessing. As he says, the last was the light of reason, is the illumination of his spirit. Bacon's moral idealism is obvious when he advancing his argument in favor of truth and asserts that the earth can be made paradise only with the help of truth. Man should ever stick to truth in every matter, do the act of charity and have faith in every matter. Do the act of charity and have faith in God. Bacon's strong belief in truth and divinity is stated thus in these two lines, that certainly it is heaven upon earth to have a man's mind move in charity, rest in providence, and turn upon the poles of truth. From the objective truth, Bacon passes judgment to the subjective truth, which he calls the truth of civil business. It is the compelling quality of truth. Bacon observes that the persons who do not practice truth acknowledge it. Bacon's idealistic moral attitude is obvious in these lines when he says that clear and round dealing is the honor of man's nature, and that mixture of falsehood is like alloy in coin of gold and silver, which may make the metal work better, but it embasses it, means it ruins it, destroy it. Bacon further asserts that the liars are like a snake that goes basely upon the belly and not upon the feet. So the liar is just like a snake who goes basely on its belly and do not stand on his feet. Imagery comprising comparison is apt and convincing, very convincing. Moreover, Bacon refers to Montaigne, who is of the view that a liar faces God and shrinks from man. Bacon adds that falsehood is the height of wickedness and as such will invite the judgment of God upon all human beings on doomsday. Therefore, Bacon concludes his essay with didacticism with a tinge of Christian morality. Now we will discuss the diction and style of Off-Truth, that how he wrote this essay, what style he has used in this essay, what is the diction of this very essay. So we will discuss. In this essay Off-Truth, there is no digression. All the arguments, all the facts in the essay pertain to the single main idea, and which is truth. All the arguments, all the facts, all the ideas revolves around the truth. So truth is a single main idea. Bacon's wide learning is clearly observed when he refers to Pilate from history, Lucian from Greek literature, and Création Montaigne, a French essayist. So using these three references, through these three references from history and from different fields, he strengthened his arguments. Off-Truth is enriched with striking similes and analogies, such as he equates liars as a snake moving basely on its belly, and mixture of falsehood is like an alloy of gold and silver. Similarly, truth is open daylight, whereas lie is candlelight, which is a fake and dim light. Truth is just like a pearl, worthy and precious, whereas lie is a diamond that reflects light illusions when placed in daylight, only in daylight. The essay Off-Truth is not ornamental, as was the practice of the Elizabethan prose writers. Bacon is simple, natural, and straightforward in his essay, though Elizabethan color is also found in Off-Truth, because there is a moderate use of Latinism in this essay. Economy of words is found in the essay not alone, but syntactic brevity is also obvious in this essay. We find conversational ease in this essay, which is the outstanding feature of Bacon's style. The conversational style is provides an easiness to the readers. There is a peculiar feature of Bacon's aphorism, and I have told you earlier that what is aphorism: an abrupt and sudden start. Moreover, we find many short, crispy, memorable and witty sayings in this essay. Therefore, Bacon's essays Off-Truth is rich in matter and manner. This is really a counsel, civil and moral. So this very essay Off-Truth meets all these three fields: counsel, civil and moral as well. So now we will discuss some concluding remarks. The world knows that Sir Francis Bacon for his worldly wisdom. He had made an analysis of the world, and in Off-Truth, he guided his readers how to get success even in critical situations, even in difficult situations. Alexander Pope called Bacon meanest kind of person because of his worldly philosophy. Bacon always focuses on worldly benefits and rarely talks about the fruits of eternal life. In Of Truth, he speaks in favor of the truth. He also differentiates it from lie and forces us to speak the truth in every situation. He supports his arguments through solid quotations. Bacon also answers some of the old skeptical people who were against the truth. He does not exaggerate truth but put reality in front of his readers. He tells to his readers that a person can only become honest if he speaks the truth. A lie may delight a person, but it does not honor him. So there is no regard, there is no respect for a liar. Bacon further asserts that the liars are like a snake that goes basely upon the belly and not upon the feet. So the liar is just like a snake who goes basely on its belly and do not stand on his feet. Imagery comprising comparison is apt and convincing, very convincing. Moreover, Bacon refers to Montaigne, who is of the view that a lie faces God and shrinks from man. Bacon adds that falsehood is the height of wickedness and as such will invite the judgment of God upon all human beings on doomsday. Therefore, Bacon concludes his essay with didacticism with a tinge of Christian morality. Numerous people are there in the world who change their minds frequently. They consider that fixed beliefs are a sign of mental slavery. Whenever they think or take decisions, they use their free will, they stubbornly ignore every belief. In Greece, there was a school of philosophers having skeptics. They may have died now, but skeptical people are there even today in this world, the world of today. Dear students, I have tried to exclude some key takeaways of this very essay. So let's take a look on these key takeaways one by one. Let's start with the first key takeaway. The first one is, why do not people speak the truth? That why the people do not speak the truth and why they do not prefer truth. There are many reasons behind not speaking the truth. One of them is that discovery of truth requires efforts and time. Let us do a critical analysis of this truth from real life example. There are many courts in every country. Each court has thousands of cases. In every case, either the defendant or the plaintiff is right. Every case has been heard for many years in order to find out who is speaking the truth. Secondly, both the parties, plaintiff and defendant, struggle to prove themselves right. Indeed, Sir Francis Bacon is right. Effort and time are required to discover the truth. Obviously, truth requires a lot of effort, a lot of time to discover it. The second reason which Bacon provides for not speaking the truth is that it is hard to digest. It is hard to absorb. When it is discovered, people hardly believe it. Then he talks about lies. He is of the view that lies attract people, but no one adopts truth. He is confused that why people tell a lie for the sake of a lie. Nevertheless, he understands that poets say lie because it gives player to human beings. Traders tell lies because they want to sell their goods, but lie for the sake of lie is not understandable. It is not justifiable. It is the compelling quality of truth. Bacon observes that the persons who do not practice truth acknowledge it. Bacon's idealistic moral attitude is obvious in these lines when he says that clear and round dealing is the honor of man's nature, and that mixture of falsehood is like alloy in coin of gold and silver, which may make the metal work better, but it embasses it, means it ruins it, destroy it. Number third, that critical analysis of truth shows that poetry is harmful. That how poetry is harmful? So let's see that how poetry is harmful. And is poetry first we will see two questions, that is poetry a lie? If so, then how it is harmful? From the point of view Bacon, no. Bacon doesn't think so. Early writers of the church called poetry a devil's wine. It is because it exaggerates things and is full of fancies. It also takes a person in the world of imagination. Therefore, they called poetry a lie and harmful to human beings. Bacon agrees that the poetry is a lie, but he denies the second allegation. He says that it is not harmful at all. He divides lies into two categories, short term and long term. Poetry tells lie, but people soon forget it. Therefore, it caused no harm to them. Only those lies are harmful that sink in the mind and are difficult to forget. Truth ends pride. Obviously, the light was the first thing which the God had created. Then he bestowed man rational faculty. Since then, he is illuminating the human minds, enlightening the human minds. Bacon advises that whenever a person takes a decision, he should rely on his rationality. It would be based upon truth. He quotes Lucretius, who says that realization of truth is the greatest pleasure in the world. When someone realizes the truth, he becomes aware of its importance. He also recognizes his false beliefs and silly hopes. Truth also nips the pride in the bud, due to which a person becomes pitiful. How truth is important? If we deeply do critical analysis of truth, then we realize that Bacon truth has its own significance, has its own importance. Falsehood brings disgrace and truth brings honor. So this is a major difference between truth and lie. The difference of disgrace and honor. Even those persons who do not speak truth knows its worth. Furthermore, the truth is required not only in the field of theology and philosophy, but also in every field of life. Bacon refers Montaigne, who says that a liar is always brave towards God but coward towards humans. By telling a liar directly challenges God. He knows that he has to face God on doomsday, on the day of this world's end, yet he promotes falsehood. Thus, he is brave enough and he is encourageous enough to get punishment in entral life. At the end of the essay, we find some morality. Bacon tries his best to convince his readers and compels them to speak truth. The last argument which he advances is the fear of doomsday. A liar would be punished on the day of judgment, and it is said by Sir Francis Bacon. So, what is the conclusion of truth's critical analysis? We can conclude that Bacon in this essay pursues people to speak the truth at any cost. He appreciates those people who stick with the truth. Thus, his tone in this essay is didactic, style is lucid, clear and vivid, and examples are rich. Solid references from Greeks, Romans, other subjects and various philosophers demonstrate experience and knowledge of the writer in every field of life. It seems that he has made critical analysis of his experiences and then written of truth. In short, the whole essay is worth reading for the person who wants success in both the worlds. What are the major characteristics of Bacon's essays? So overall, we will see the major characteristics of Bacon's essays, not only the of truth, but overall all the essays. Francis Bacon was known as the father of English essay, as I have told you earlier, who occupied a distinctive, a prominent position in English literature. He wrote widely on politics, philosophy and science. Some of the characteristic features of his essays are: they are loaded with wisdom of experience, as I have told you earlier that these are carried a meaning of ocean, an ocean of meanings. Wisdom of experience and observations conveyed through short, compact and terse sentences. Terse means brief sentences. They present all aspects of human life and cover topics like truth, religion, beauty, friendship, marriage and architecture. Terseness of expression means the briefness of expression, the condensedness of expression and epigrammatic gravity are two of the important characteristics. His essays begin with either a catchy phrase or a question. We can also see the use of figurative language in his essays. Therefore, Bacon was a pioneer of modern science whose contributions were majorly philosophical, but his essays are largely written in a scientific manner. In Bacon's essays, he has made use of Latin and Greek quotations, as he had comprehensive knowledge of the classics. They include aptness of the similes, the witty turn of phrases, and the compact expression of weighty thoughts. Metaphors can be found in his essays, for example, in Of Studies, and other essay of Bacon. He compares our natural abilities to the growth of a plant. As a plant needs pruning, our natural qualities are also guided by studies. Now we will discuss the chief thematic and stylistic features of Sir Francis Bacon's essays. Thematically, Francis Bacon's essays typically deal with universal themes announced in their titles, like Of Adversity, Of Beauty and Of Death are a few. Bacon used an impersonal style when philosophizing on these types of themes and avoided referencing his personal experiences. He always avoided his personal experiences. He often expressed his ideas in short and pithy phrases, and while he sometimes eschewed conventional grammar, Bacon was adept at crafting a carefully balanced sentence structure using semicolons. His essays are full of references to the classics. What is the style of his writing? When discussing the style and themes of Sir Francis Bacon's essays, it is important to remember that the essays were published in 3 editions in Bacon's lifetime, and each new edition added more themes to the list of topics treated, and each of the later editions presented essays that tended to be longer and more elaborate in style than the editions that preceded them. Nevertheless, critics have cited some common traits of Bacon's style and themes, and perhaps these can best be illustrated by examining a particular essay, in this case the essay titled of Death. It is the compelling quality of truth. Bacon observes that the persons who do not practice truth acknowledge it. Bacon's idealistic moral attitude is obvious in these lines when he says that clear and round dealing is the honor of man's nature, and that mixture of falsehood is like alloy in coin of gold and silver, which may make the metal work better, but it embasses it, means it ruins it, destroy it. Here the phrase "man fear death" immediately catches our attention. Man is balanced later by children, and the phrasing that follows the semicolon is as balanced as the phrasing that precedes it. Meanwhile, the phrase on either side of the semicolon are themselves balanced, and this frequent use of balance in Bacon's essays suggests the mental balance and sensible reasoning of the author. The fact that Bacon is dealing with such a universally interesting topic as death is also typical of his essay, which very often deal with precisely such topics. Rather than writing about his personal experiences or perceptions, Bacon writes about topics likely to. How might Francis Bacon's essay of truth be analyzed? In Francis Bacon's essay of truth, the author extols the value of truth and critically explains that there are many people who do not place much value on truth. As they find lies more interesting, Bacon asserts that truth comes straight from God, so our relationship with truth brings humans closer to God. Hence, we can derive pleasure from truth. As one of Bacon's most famous prose works on truth employs rhetorical questions and allegories as a means of persuasion. In the midst of the sun is the light, in the midst of the light is truth, and in the midst of truth is the imperishable being. The Vedas. These lines has been taken from Ved. The first creature of God in the work of the days was the light of the senses. The last was the light of the reason, and his seventh work ever since is the illumination of his spirit. From Of Truth by Sir Francis Bacon. It is very important to observe that Bacon's essay Of Truth occupies the first or foremost place in the collection. Also that this essay opens and concludes with the allusion to our Saviour, who was the way, the truth and the life. Bacon commences with the words that what is truth? Said jesting Pilate, the very opening, these lines has been taken from Of Truth. Said jesting Pilate, and would not stay for an answer. Jesting Pilate, the Roman governor who punished the Jesus Christ, and the essay ends with the words, surely the wickedness of falsehood and breach of faith cannot possibly be so highly expressed as in that it shall be the last peal to call the judgment of God upon the generations of men. It being foretold that when Christ cometh, he shall not find faith upon the earth. This is repeated in the essay of Counsel also. Number third, that critical analysis of truth shows that poetry is harmful. That how poetry is harmful? So let's see that how poetry is harmful. And is poetry, first we will see two questions, that is poetry a lie? If so, then how it is harmful? From the point of view Bacon, no. Bacon doesn't think so. Early writers of the church called poetry a devil's wine. It is because it exaggerates things and is full of fancies. It also takes a person in the world of imagination. Therefore, they call poetry a lie and harmful to human beings. Bacon agrees that the poetry is a lie, but he denies truth and pride. Obviously, the light was the first thing which the God had created. Then he bestowed man rational faculty. Since then, he is illuminating the human minds, enlightening the human minds. Bacon advises that whenever a person takes a decision, he should rely on his rationality. It would be based upon truth. He quotes Lucretius, who says that realization of truth is the greatest pleasure in the world. When someone realizes the truth, he becomes aware of its importance. He also recognizes his false beliefs and silly hopes. Truth also nips the pride in the. Mark Twain has recently drawn a parallel comparing Shakespeare as a critic to Satan, and there is something in it, for all denial is of the badge of Antichrist. And has not the great German poet Goethe described Mephistopheles and his followers with the words, "Des Stats Vernens, who everlasting denies." The above mentioned three words are from German, and it is a translation that "who everlasting denies." After all, rebutting evidence is always easier than proof, for the thing saves trouble if one only takes one's ignorance seriously or affirmatively. Setting up for a judge instead of a learner and imagining a faculty of not knowing can be a criterion for passing judgments upon new discoveries. Coming in a man's own name, Bacon declares, is no infallible sign of truth, for certainly there cometh to pass and hath place in human truth that which was noted and pronounced in the highest truth, veni in nomine Patris, ner recipitis me seques venitet in nominatio eum recipitis. I came in the name of the Father, but ye didn't receive me. If anyone shall come in his own name, him ye receive. Now we will discuss the chief thematic and stylistic features of Sir Francis Bacon's essays. Thematically, Francis Bacon's essays typically deal with universal themes announced in their titles, like of adversity, of beauty, and of death are a few. Bacon used an impersonal style when philosophizing on these types of themes and avoided referencing his personal experiences. He always avoided his personal experiences. He often expressed his ideas in short. Again, men have been kept back as by a kind of enchantment from progress in this science, by reverence for antiquity, by the authority of men accounted great in philosophy, and then by general consent. And with regard to authority, it shows a feeble mind to grant so much to authors and yet deny time his rights. Who is the author of authors? Nay, rather of all authority, for rightly is truth called the daughter of time. By consent, Bacon means the world's general or universal assent or tradition, as for example that Shakespeare is the author of the 1623 folio plays. The world often mistake echoes for volume, and there is the popular fallacy that counting of heads is proof of truth, but in matters intellectual it is not as with physical power or wealth. There is no aggregate or arithmetical sum total, as for example when men pull on a rope or heap up money, but it is rather as in a race where only a few can be first and there is no addition of spears. So here Bacon, for the worst of all agrees, is from consent in matters and intellectual, for nothing pleases the many unless it strikes the imagination or binds the understanding with the bonds of common notions. Therefore the sayings that the world says or the world believes, though to be respected, is not final and should not deter us from examining a new problems which the past generations had probably no time or curiosity to question, besides, as Bacon says in this essay, of truth. Therefore the saying that the world says or the world believes, though to be respected, is not final and should not deter us from examining a new problems which the past generations had probably no time or curiosity to question, besides, as Bacon essays in this essay of truth. The first creature of God in the work of the day was the light of the senses, the last was the light of reason, and his sapped work ever since is the illumination of his spirit. So here is the list of all references. That's all from my side. Stay blessed, keep watching, keep listening, keep studying. Have a happy and safe life at your homes. Allah Hafiz.